After the first race of the season, it was evident that the W14 wouldn't be a competitive challenger compared to Ferrari and Red Bull. Not only that, it seems like the Mercedes car won't be the third fastest on the grid, something that was given to them in 2022 after the miserable start of the season, and they're going to face fierce competition from Aston Martin. The UK-based team has taught a lesson to Mercedes, with both of their drivers being better than Hamilton and Russell respectively, and now the alarm bell has been turned in Brackley. Hamilton was the latest one to talk about the W14 and the potential of the car, and his belief for the 2023 season isn't a very competitive one as of now. If there is something that we've learned from the pre-season testing in Bahrain and the qualifying process, it's that Mercedes have failed to produce a competitive car for the second consecutive season. Even though the regulations were tweaked to favour the Brackley-based team, the problem seems to be a very deep one, and it's not something that can be fixed overnight. One of the issues that the W14 continues to face is the design of the side pods, something that Russell and Hamilton had separate opinions on in the 2022 season. While Hamilton wasn't a fan of the innovative design being introduced in the 2022 and further developed for the current season, which is it being narrowed down, Russell and Wolff believe that the car isn't losing pace or performance due to the no-pod side pod design. After all, Russell was able to finish in the top 5 consistently in 2022 with the current design, and that's why everyone believed that Mercedes would be the most dominant team in 2023 with the side pod design taken a step further. Now, one thing that Hamilton was able to notch from the first race in the current season is the fact that the W14 is not as competitive as they would originally want it to be, and it doesn't take a genius to understand that as well. However, the 7-time world champion wasn't particularly happy with what he experienced from his car during the pre-season testing, and this is where people started to wonder whether Mercedes is actually sandbagging or if they're legitimately driving a bad car for the 2023 season. Now, when talking about the pace that his car presented in Bahrain during the pre-testing, Hamilton said, "We found out we're a long way off, so we kind of knew that a little bit at the rest, but it's a big gap. I'm trying everything I can out there, but it is what it is. We're offset in low and high speed corners, so comparing to Red Bull in the long runs, they were a second lap faster. We've got a lot to work on." Now, how did Mercedes go from a championship-winning car just a couple of years ago to fighting for P4 in the Constructors' Championship, with a team that's been constantly labelled as copycats throughout their existence? It seems like the team is upgrading backwards, something that Hamilton has spoken about and offered his brutal assessment of the W14 and what the team can expect from it in the following races. But before we go into that, let's talk a bit about the design and why more or less every issue comes from here. As we mentioned earlier in this video, Mercedes are currently rocking the same design as 2022. The team isn't ready to accept that they were wrong and that they got everything wrong during the new technical regulation era. And it seems like their ego has been inflated to the point where we cannot understand what can be done at this point in their existence. Wolff, for one, accepted that the team is going to change the design in the upcoming weeks, and the W14 will look much different than the first race in Bahrain. This is something that's been denied by Elliott before the beginning of the race, but now that he's been slapped with a hard reality check in terms of being competitive and falling back to Aston Martin, it seems like the technical director will change his mind as well. The team's principal spoke about the radical design of the W14 after what he's labelled as one of the worst races of the team. When talking about this matter, the Austrian said, "One of the worst days racing, really not good at all. We're just lacking pace, and that's a reflection of the test. The Aston Martin is very fast, they deserve that, and Red Bull is just on a different planet. That is what hurts because they're so far ahead. It reminds you of the days when we put the second on everybody. That's the benchmark, but we need to put one step after the other to just come back, and then we can do that. We can. We cannot wait for the planned Imola update. We need to be much more radical in the steps than just hope for a 3/10 upgrade."
It looks good. And I'm so happy that we've gone back also to the black livery, and we're going to talk about it in a second. Is she going to be as fast as she looks? I hope so, but definitely there is a lot of excitement in putting the car finally on the road.
Now, given the fact that Ferrari is struggling with reliability issues, one couldn't help but wonder, is this slowly shaping up to be a replicated season from 2022? As of now, the cards that Mercedes has been dealt with aren't good ones, and for the first time in their existence, they would have to look at the design of other cars if they want to be competitive and fight for wins and championships in 2023. Sure, one race isn't enough to make assumptions on where a team is currently placed, but if you think about it, this is exactly what Mercedes feared once the cars hit the ground in pre-testing in Bahrain. Mercedes has proven that the side pod design isn't working, but according to Ted Kravitz, the team also missed a lot of development on their engine during the engine freeze window, and that's something that they'll regret a lot. Aston Martin is the team that purchases the engines from Mercedes, and to see a team that finished 7th in 2022 conquer both Ferrari and Mercedes in the first race of the season is something astonishing. It just goes to show that progress can be made, but only if the team is moving in the right direction with the right people. As for Mercedes, Hamilton doesn't believe that the team is on the right track, adding that the Silver Arrows are currently moving backwards in progress and are the 4th best team on the grid. It's hard when a 7-time world champion, whose sole purpose was to fight for the record-breaking 8th championship in the drivers' category, has to say those words, but we don't see any lies being told by the Briton. When talking about this matter, Hamilton was very bitter, and he didn't hold back on his words, as he further elaborated. I genuinely loved the racing. I had a great start, got Fernando in turn 4 and I was like, oh geez, this is a great start to the race. It felt like one of my better opening laps. Then I was just sliding around. I had so much understeer at the beginning. I took so much wing out. I couldn't get around some of the corners and I just couldn't keep up with the guys ahead. My middle stint was good, and then at the end I was so close to catching Carlos, but it wasn't good enough. We definitely can't fight them at the moment. They were much quicker than us, as were the Astons. We're the 4th fastest team now, as opposed to the 3rd last year. We're going backwards, so we really have a lot of work to do to close the gap. One thing is almost certain, and that's Mercedes will not be able to fight for wins in a proper fight with Red Bull. This has been confirmed by Russell, who not only said that the Red Bulls are in their own league, but he also believes that the Austrian team will win every single race in the season, and no one can present a proper challenge to them in the following seasons. This raises the question of whether Hamilton has the confidence to remain in the sport as a full-time driver for Mercedes, now that the 8th championship has proven itself to be a very challenging one to conquer. The downshift in Mercedes is huge, and there's a lot of chance that they won't be able to shift the momentum in the following races as well, with Hamilton and Russell likely to experience Bahrain over and over again in the upcoming weeks. Toto Wolff has been very critical of the W14, and it seems like he understands that Aston Martin has gained 2 seconds of time in half a year, and the car that they're driving is basically half Mercedes, from the engine to the gearbox and rear suspension. This just goes to show that Mercedes may be deep in the comfort zone, and now the time has come for real changes. With that being said, what do you think about Hamilton's claim on the W14? Do you think that this will be the 2nd winless season of his career after suffering the first one last year? Let us know in the comments down below.